On the morning of March 22, 1993, a machine the size of a toy locomotive was crawling up a passage inside the Great Pyramid of Giza that no human being has ever entered. The passage measures about 20 centimeters on a side. It climbs through the core masonry at a steep angle from the south wall of the room we call the Queen's Chamber, and for 120 years everyone assumed it simply ran until it ran out. The machine was named Upuaut Two, after the jackal god Upuaut, the opener of the ways, the god who walked ahead of the dead. Its builder, a German engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink, watched the video feed as the little robot ground its way upward, meter after meter, past rough local stone, until at roughly 63 meters the headlights caught something that should not have been there. The rough stone stopped. In its place stood a smooth, pale slab of fine limestone, fitted across the full width of the passage, and set into its face were two small pins of green, corroded copper. It looked, on every screen in the room, like a door. A sealed door, deep inside the most examined building on Earth, at the end of a corridor too small for any living person to reach. The oldest funerary texts of Egypt describe the road of the dead as a road of doors. They name the ones the dead must pass, and they name one the dead must never open. By the end of this, you will know what the texts say waits behind it, and what a camera finally glimpsed on the far side of the stone. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. You already know the standard account, because everyone does. The Great Pyramid was raised around 2560 BCE as the tomb of the pharaoh Khufu. It was stripped by robbers in antiquity. Its interior has been crawled, measured, and mapped for over 1,000 years, and the map is short. A descending corridor, an ascending one, the Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber with its empty granite box, the smaller Queen's Chamber below it. Every stone accounted for. Almost. 4 narrow shafts run outward from the two chambers, and the pair from the King's Chamber punch clean through to the open faces of the pyramid. The pair from the Queen's Chamber do something stranger. They stop dead inside the masonry, and they were sealed at both ends from the day the building was finished. When the engineer Wayneman Dixon examined the Queen's Chamber in 1872, there were no openings in its walls at all. The builders had left the final few inches of stone uncut, hiding the shafts completely. Dixon found them by noticing a hairline crack and chiseling through, and out of the northern one came 3 small objects that had been shut in the dark for 4,500 years, a granite ball, a copper hook, and a length of cedar. 2 corridors then, hidden behind unbroken wall at the bottom, closed by a fitted slab at the top, aimed upward through 2 million blocks of stone toward a sky they never reach. The standard account calls them air channels. Air channels are not sealed at both ends. Before the stone can make sense, you have to understand what a door was to the people who built this. Walk through any Old Kingdom cemetery, at Sokar, at Giza itself, and you will find the same object repeated thousands of times, carved into the tomb chapels of officials and princes. Egyptologists call it a false door. It is a full doorway, frame, lintel, jambs, and central niche, cut from a single piece of stone, with an offering slab set at its foot. It opens onto nothing. Solid rock stands behind it. And yet it was the single most important element in the tomb, because it was not built for bodies. The texts around these doors are clear about their purpose. The Ka, the spirit of the dead owner, passed through the stone to receive the bread and beer left on the slab, then passed back. The living stood in front of it and never went through. The dead moved through it and never stayed. Egypt, which built more permanently in stone than any civilization before or since, spent an extraordinary share of that stone on doors that do not open. A door, to these builders, was not a hole in a wall, it was a boundary between kinds of beings, and it worked in one direction. The funerary texts take that idea and turn it into geography. In the papyrus of the scribe Ani, held today in the British Museum, spell 144 of the Book of the Dead lays out 7 gates standing across the road into the land of the dead. Each gate has 3 beings stationed at it, a keeper, a watcher, and a herald who announces what approaches. Their names are not comforting. One keeper is called He Whose Face is Turned Backward. Another being is named He Who Lives on Snakes. The vignettes paint them seated at their gates holding knives across their knees. The dead person cannot force these doors and cannot slip past them. There is exactly one key, and the key is knowledge. The traveler must speak the name of each gate and each guardian aloud, correctly, in order. Say the names, and the door swings inward and the road continues. Fail, and the knives are there for a reason. A door in this world opens to strength or cunning. A door on the road of the dead opens to the right words and to nothing else, and it closes again behind the one who passes. Then there is the deeper map, and the place on it where the rules change. On the walls of royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings, beginning with the tomb of Thutmose III, the Egyptians painted a complete chart of the netherworld called the Amduat, the book of what is in the hidden place. It divides the night into 12 hours, and follows the sun god's boat through each one, gate after gate, hour after hour. In the 4th and 5th hours, the boat enters a country unlike the rest of the dark. The texts call it the land of Sokar, the falcon-headed god of the dead of the Memphite cemeteries, and they give it a name, Rosetau, the mouth of the corridors. The river disappears here. The paintings show narrow zigzag passages cutting through desert sand, corridors drawn exactly like shafts through solid ground, with fitted doors at their turnings, and captions that describe the ways as filled with fire. At the center of the 5th hour stands the strangest image in all Egyptian art. A sealed oval mound, guarded, wrapped in total darkness, with the god Sokar hidden inside it upon his sand. The sunboat does not enter it. The boat is towed up and over the mound while the god's light passes above, and the texts state that this one region stays dark even as the sun goes by, that what is inside is hidden, that the boat hears the sound from within, but does not stop and does not open. The captions around the mound describe the cry that comes out of it as the boat goes by, a sound the texts compare to the roar of the sky in a storm, heard through the sealed shell by the passing god and left unanswered. Every other gate in the 12 hours exists to be passed. This one exists to stay shut. In the entire written map of the world of the dead, there is one door that even the greatest of the gods leaves closed, and the corridors leading to it are drawn as shafts in the earth at a place called Rosetau. The name is older than the painting. It appears in the pyramid texts, carved into royal tombs at Saqqara, barely 2 centuries after Khufu, and in later periods the name attaches firmly to one location above ground. Rosetau was the necropolis of Memphis. Rosetau was Giza. Hold that thought against the slab Gantenbrink found. He had not come to Egypt hunting mysteries. He was an engineer hired in 1992 to help improve ventilation in the pyramid, and he built his crawler robots to survey the shafts because nothing else could fit inside them. The southern shaft of the Queen's chamber fought the machine the whole way, the joints uneven, the stone rough and local. Then, at around 63 meters, the character of the passage changed. The final stretch was lined with fine white limestone from the Tura quarries, the same premium stone reserved for the pyramid's outer casing, polished smooth, in a place no eye was ever meant to see, and across the end stood the slab. The 2 copper pins fitted into it remain the only metal fixtures ever documented in place within the pyramid's core masonry. Below the slab's bottom edge, the camera caught a thin, dark gap, a few millimeters of open space, proof that something, even if only more darkness, continued behind it. Gantenbrink measured the block, logged the footage, and announced the find in April of 1993. Then the permits ended, the project stalled, and the door sat untouched in the dark for 9 more years, while the world argued about what it was. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything, and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. In September of 2002, the argument produced a drill, a new robot, built for a National Geographic expedition and watched by a live television audience across the world, climbed the southern shaft, set a bit against the slab, and bored a hole the width of a finger through 4,500 years of stillness. A camera went through the hole. On the far side it found a small open space, about a hand's length deep, and then the picture filled with stone again. A second block. Unlike the polished door in front of it, this one was rough, its surface unworked and crossed by a crack, a back wall that looked less like a door and more like something a door was protecting. The hole itself told a story. The slab turned out to be only about 6 centimeters thick, a panel rather than a plug, far too slight to serve any structural purpose in a building whose ordinary blocks weigh more than a car. Whoever set it there was not holding back the pyramid. They were closing something. The same expedition then sent the robot up the northern shaft, the one that had to bend around the Grand Gallery in a series of careful turns no air channel would ever need. Turns the builders planned and executed in the blind interior of the rising structure. At almost exactly the same distance from the chamber, the camera stopped in front of a second polished limestone slab fitted with 2 copper pins. 2 shafts on opposite sides of the room, threading separately through the largest mass of stone ever assembled, each arriving at its own matching sealed door at its own matching depth. One door could be a leftover, an accident of construction. 2 identical doors at mirrored positions are a decision. The last machine to go up, and the one that saw the most, belonged to the Djedi project, a joint effort of Egypt's Antiquities Ministry and engineers from the University of Leeds. In 2011, their robot carried a microsnake camera, a flexible lens that could pass through the 2002 borehole, and, for the first time, bend around and look at the hidden side of the first door. 3 details came back down the shaft with the footage. First, the copper pins do not end in the stone. On the far side, they curl into small, deliberate loops, the same form Egyptian craftsmen gave the fittings on shrine doors, the anchor points for cords and clay seals, hardware that belongs to the ritual sealing of a sacred space, and faces the wrong way to be handles for anyone on our side. Second, the floor of the little space beyond the door is polished and finished, worked with care, in a void the builders closed off before the pyramid above it was even complete. And third, on that finished floor, the camera found marks. Signs painted in red ochre by the last hands ever to touch that space, possibly builders' numerals in the cursive hieratic script, photographed but never conclusively read, a message of some kind lying face up in a room addressed to no one living. Set beside all this one more measurement. In 1964, the Egyptologist Alexander Badawi and the astronomer Virginia Trimble calculated that the king's chamber shafts in the sky of 2500 BCE pointed at the belt of Orion and at the circumpolar stars, the destinations the pyramid texts promised to the risen king, for whom Orion was the god Osiris. When Gantenbrink's precise survey of the queen's chamber shafts was run through that same ancient sky, the southern shaft, the one that ends at the door, aimed at the rising of Sirius, the star of the goddess Sopdet, herald of the flood and of rebirth. The corridor points at the star of resurrection and stops at a sealed door 60 meters short of the sky. The orthodox reading of all this deserves to be stated fairly, because it is held by careful people with full command of the evidence. Many Egyptologists, including veterans of decades of work at Giza, regard the shafts as symbolic passages for the king's spirit, model corridors that needed only to exist, never to function as physical routes. In that view, the slabs are either plugging blocks left over from construction or miniature false doors in their own right, spiritual terminations of a spiritual road, and the copper pins may simply be handles used to lower the final block into place. Nothing in that position is foolish. The Egyptians built symbolically all the time, and a boat buried in pieces beside the pyramid was still a boat to them. But the plug theory covers the slab and stops there. Polished Tura casing stone lining the last meters of a corridor no one could see. Sealing loops on the far side of the pins, turned away from the world of the living. A finished floor and painted signs beyond the door, inside a space that was closed before the building was. A twin door and a twin shaft. Corridors hidden behind uncut wall at the bottom and fitted stone at the top, aimed at the stars of Osiris and Sopdet from a plateau whose ancient name, Rosetau, marks it in the oldest religious texts on earth as the mouth of the corridors of the hidden land. The symbolic reading explains why the shafts exist. It has far less to say about why they were built like this. So here is the reading, stated plainly as the theory it is. The interior of the Great Pyramid was built as the geography of the night, translated into stone. The chambers and passages are not merely rooms and access routes but stations on the road the texts describe, and the Queen's chamber shafts are the corridors of Rosetau, the narrow fiery ways drawn in the 5th hour of the Amduat, cut through the sand of Sokar toward the one enclosure that stays dark. The slab with its copper loops is that door. A door in the full Egyptian sense, sealed like a shrine, finished on the side that belongs to the dead and blank on the side that belongs to us, passable by a ka and by starlight and by nothing else. The texts say the dead man walks a road of gates and opens them with names, and that at the heart of the hidden land he passes one sealed place he must leave sealed, because what is inside belongs to Sokar alone, and even the sun does not look at it. If the builders of Giza meant what the builders of the tombs painted, then behind the second rough block waits the pyramid's version of that place, the hidden land in miniature, a chamber of the god kept in deliberate and permanent darkness at the heart of Rosetau. That is the theory, and I will not pretend it is proven. What is proven is narrower and stranger. There is a finished, marked, unentered space inside the Great Pyramid, behind a door built to be sealed from the far side, and no one alive knows how far it goes. Before we go further, or rather before we stop, one thing should be said in plain words. This is a channel about the questions the ancient world has not fully answered. Some of what you have just heard is solid and documented. The robots, the doors, the loops, the red signs, the star alignments, the texts. The reading that binds them together is a theory, and I have marked it as one. The point is not to hand you a verdict. It is to show you what is actually up that shaft and let you decide what you think it means. And what is up that shaft is still there. The second block has never been passed. The northern door has never been drilled. The red ochre signs have never been formally read. The Djedi project wound down in the unrest that followed 2011, and in the years since, no camera has gone back. The little borehole is still there, a dark eye the width of a finger in a slab of Tura limestone, 63 meters up a passage no shoulder will ever fit through, and on the far side of it the red signs are still lying face up on their polished floor, waiting for a reader. A door that was shut when the seas were higher and the mammoths were only just gone has, in 45 centuries, been opened exactly one finger's width. The text told the dead to pass it and leave it closed. So far, whether by permit, by chance, or by something like respect, the living have obeyed. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.